Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Cindy Griffith to the podcast. She is a psychic spiritual teacher, conference speaker, and author. Cindy has a diverse background in metaphysics and energetic healing. She is the author of Soul Soothers, Mini Meditations for Busy Lives, and co-author of Voyage of Purpose and Grow Your Spiritual Business. She shares her psychic insights and teaches throughout the United States, online and at the Edgar Cayce ARE Center in Virginia Beach. So welcome, Cindy.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. We connected about a month or so ago. One of my new board members and my executive admin both have recommended you through the work at Edgar Cayce and came across these beautiful meditations and cartoons. And we all get a laugh. One of the ones we talked about are called Positive Poop. And they're the cutest little cartoons with the poop emoji. And so every time we talk about it, we laugh, and you're bringing a lot of laughter into our space.
Well, I think laughter is so needed because we get so serious because we're dealing with serious stuff, life and death and everything that entails. And I think whether you're on a spiritual journey or whether you're on just the life journey, laughter is key, and laughter helps get us through.
It does. So tell me a little bit about your background. I mean, have you always been this spiritual?
No, actually, I was probably what you might consider a problem child. And I did a lot of experimentation and I did a lot of unhealthy living, and I crashed, both literally and figuratively. But I had someone who cared about me say, I don't know where your parents are in all of this, but here's a therapist. And I eventually straightened my life out. And then I didn't meet, he was long gone, but Joseph Campbell. And it brought back my faith. And so first I rediscovered, coming from a place of being raised Presbyterian, but totally not believing any of it, to being able to understand the depth and complexity and why the things that I struggled with were oversimplification of beautiful universal spiritual principles. And so I was able to regain my faith. From there, I explored the spiritual realm because I resonated with that more. And so in my early 30s is when I kind of discovered all of this, late 20s, early 30s. And I did a lot of training. I used to come down, matter of fact, I used to come to Charlottesville, Virginia for a healing school. I did a 3-year metaphysical teacher training program and some other things. And I went back to school because of being a problem child, I never finished college. And so I went back to college and I got my BS in basically spiritual counseling and healing. And then which was a rare BS, it was a rare degree, but it was through a really cool program where you could make up, as long as it was academic, make up your own degree. And then years later, I went back for my master's in basically spiritual maturity, which was looking at a lot of things, but looking at folklore, cultural anthropology, they call it, but it's basically fairy tales and myths. So cool. And then looking at religion and psychology, and looking at finally at the mystics and their journey and how similar different mystics' journeys are, including Edgar Cayce, with the same journey. It's not, linear, so it's not exactly the same, but that all brought me to the spirituality that I practice, which is non-denominational, non-religion specific, and kind of where I came to my understanding of energy and all that was through that journey.
So this has been your career.
It is. I've been teaching, when they say, what did you want to be when you were a kid? I wanted to be a special education teacher. Like I said, I flunked out of college the first time. That's what I was going to college for. But I feel like I still teach special education, but it's instead of to people that are struggling to comprehend, it's more just a special form of education. And so I think I've always been a teacher. And then, I do a lot of counseling, and I put it in quotes because it's not what we think of as traditional counseling, and I wouldn't call myself a counselor. Legally, it wouldn't be appropriate, but I do a lot of counseling through my intuitive practice. So yeah, I've been doing this my whole life. Well, since I turned my life around. I feel like it's a second life, you know.
Amazing. I find this work so fascinating. And when we were talking earlier, I mean, we got on the topic of empathy, and at the foundation, we bring to light a lot of the issues around not only someone going through a medical journey, but also the impact of the caregivers. And empathy is so vast when you really think of that word and how we approach ourselves and other people. And you are now in the role of a caregiver with your husband. Is that correct?
Yes, my husband, for the second time, has stage 4 cancer. First time, 25 years ago. Matter of fact, we just got engaged 25 years ago, Valentine's Day. He had come out of a chemo treatment, and back then, he had stage 4 lung and bone cancer, and the chemo treatments were really tough, but they gave him so much Benadryl that he was okay for like 2 hours, right? So right after the treatment, we went to the restaurant, Valentine's Day. He proposed. He was like, okay, I'm going to throw up now. I have to go home. So, that's one of the things you learn as a caretaker. You take what you can get and you go with the flow. Now he's 25 years later, he's dealing with stage 4 maxilla and sinus cancer. And he's doing well. You and I were talking about that beforehand. So I find myself back in the role. And in between that, he had bladder cancer, but that was kind of a non-issue. He went through that pretty easy. So I'm back in the role of caregiver again. I think empathy is everyone sees that differently. And so I think that maybe if we define the empathy I'm going to be talking about today, might be helpful. The empathy that I am talking about is kind of the intuitive sense that you don't have to be psychic to have, right? Many people are empathic, where we feel, sense, know, or somehow are affected by other people's energy. It could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be psychological, and it doesn't have to be distant. It's not distant specific. In other words, you can be picking up on somebody empathically who is 3,000 miles away. So that's the empathy that I feel that I have come to be able to talk about intelligently, or at least point of view, right?
No, it's fascinating when you say 3,000 miles away. It's almost like we are also connected.
Well, before, I don't know if you remember, but years ago, gosh, it's been a long time now, but there was that big tsunami. And before that tsunami hit, a lot of people in my community were saying, I don't know why I'm so anxious. I'm just anxious. I don't know why I'm so anxious. And it was, energetically picking up on this happening. But then afterwards, people were, whether they were very mainstream or whether they were in the spiritual community, they were having this empathic reaction where they could just feel the pain of the world. And in a vision at the time when that was happening, I saw the world, I saw the tsunami, but then I saw love coming out from everyone, just enveloping the world in a love tsunami, so to speak. And I think that was, so many people had an empathic reaction. And our natural go-to when we're having an empathic reaction, most of us want to fix it so we don't feel pain anymore. And when you can't fix it, whether it's a loved one going through cancer, you cannot be the fixer, or something like a tsunami, miles and miles away. What do? We throw love at it, And as a matter of fact, I was at the doctor the other day, and I keep annoying my husband with trying to remind him to eat. And it seems to be a trigger, and it's ticking him off, quite honestly. And it's about the only struggle we're having right now. And the PA says, well, remember, both of your reactions are from love.
Funny.
Yeah. So, empathically, when we're dealing as a caregiver, I think one of the things that's important to remember is that, yes, you are uncomfortable, and it may not even be your discomfort that you're feeling, but you're experiencing it. You got to take care of you. And because you can't fix the situation when you're in the situation that we're talking about, like a caregiver, you can't fix it. And you can't even nurture it away, because you're going to smother the other person and that's not going to help, right? So, and everybody has their different things. Some people like to be babied and some people don't. My husband does not, so I think it's really important to recognize, okay, this may not be my anxiety, but I'm feeling it anyway. What do I need to do? Whether it's breathing, I just got back from lunch from a dear friend, and that's one of the things I do, call up lunch with a friend, get out of the house. So, we have these empathic reactions. And I think first and key is this mine or is this who I'm caring for? And then once you recognize that, can I do anything about it? Do they want me to do anything about it? If I can't, or I do and it's still there, what can I do? Maybe what am I doing also, not but also what am I doing for me? Because as an empathic person, especially until you have awareness and the ability to have better boundaries, it's going to toss you around like a tissue in the.
Right. And so what advice would you give to people? Let's just give an example because we're talking about a caregiver. If they're accompanying a loved one to a medical appointment and they walk into, let's say, a clinic and it's overwhelming. So it could be their anxiety. It could be the anxiety of the person going for treatment. Is there a tool to help someone kind of ground themselves and determine?
Yeah, mindfulness. First, protein will ground you. Water will ground you to some extent, but it'll also sometimes make you wishy-washy. Feeling your feet, focusing on your feet, touching the ground as you're walking in and being aware, saying your name, I am Cindy, I am Wendy, whatever, paying attention to, is this mine? Is this theirs? The other thing to do, and it's a little bit woo-woo, but the other thing to do is just to imagine yourself like in an egg. Right? Imagine yourself like that's your energy field. That's your aura. Imagine yourself in an egg and that it's not blocking because you don't want that energetically. That's not good. But just imagine that you're kind of glowing, kind of like a superhero might glow, right? That you're kind of glowing. And when you start feeling these feelings, imagine you just glowing a little bit brighter. This is me. This is my space. The other thing I recommend, again, is labeling it. That's mine. That's not mine. Is there anything I can do for them? Is there anything I can do for the situation? What am I doing for me? I mean, it always comes back, and it's not selfish. It's essential. It always comes back to what am I doing for me? Because if you are not the best you cannot be the best anything to anyone else.
100%. I mean, I've talked about this many times, how when Ben was in treatment, I would find a yoga class close to where we are. I mean, just that little bit of time, even though I felt guilty as heck, not being with him as much as I could, but it just grounded me so much.
Well, and then you could be more with him.
Oh, so when I was there, I was like 100% present. I like to think that I was the best I could be during the time, and how important that is for a patient.
Well, and as an adult, if you're a caregiver for an adult, you do not want to add to their guilt by you not taking care of you. Empathy aside, if you're not taking care of you, then they have enough to deal with than feeling guilty about the fact that you're not taking care of you, because you're probably not a caregiver if that person doesn't love you, right? I mean, sometimes you are, sometimes you're stuck with it, right? But for the most part, the person loves you. And if you don't take care of you, you are adding to their plate. It's one of the things my husband's very excited. I mean, also he likes alone time, so he's happy. But he's very excited when he sees me going out to lunch with a friend because he knows I'm taking care of myself. He doesn't have to worry about me. It's one less thing off his plate.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So the way you talk about empathy, it really kind of can deepen your connection with the other person.
Absolutely. Intimacy, into you, I see, or whatever, it is. Into me, you see. Intimacy, because when you have the mindfulness and the awareness to be able to say, that's yours, this is mine, then you are taking the time to know them better. You're taking the time to know you better. And when the person you're caring for doesn't feel like they need to keep things from you because you're not taking care of yourself, or they silly think that you don't feel it, or it's like, yeah, you can hide that, but I know what's going on. But everybody's like me, right? So But the more that you show that you have the ability to understand what they're going through, you're taking care of yourself, you're willing to help when you can, the more that they can be themselves in their situation. So if, for example, Dave's having a shitty day, he knows I'm taking care of myself. He knows he's not adding more onto me. And he knows then that by him admitting he's having a crummy day, excuse my French, if I can know, if he's being honest and saying, I'm having a crummy day, I don't have to wonder, is it me? You know? I think it brings a level of honesty when you can be honest with each other about how you're feeling. And it's hard to get when you're dealing with a caregiver who's empathic and they're mindful about it and they know and they see, then the other person can relax and say, well, I don't have to hide anything because it's not going to help anyway. But now we can have an honest conversation about it. You know?
When I was going through treatment, I was very clear the people that I allowed to go with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I could sense and say, okay, your dad would go with me. And he was just grounded. And I could do whatever I needed to do. He didn't judge me. And it brought me a lot of comfort.
Yeah. When Dave was first diagnosed 25 years ago, the first time, he actually sent me away because I just was not any help. I just couldn't stop crying. I was no help at all. And it doesn't mean that you have to be strong all the time, because if you're not in integrity with who you are and where you're at, the other person's going to know anyway. And then you can't live it out of integrity with what's going on. That's why you need friends. Like I said to my friend last week, was tough. You know, Dave and I were just at each other because it's not all roses. You know, you have bad weeks, right? Yeah, it was very emotional. I cried at the doctor's office, you know. But anyway, he sent me away and it was good because I had to get away in order to detach, to be able to come back fully. And that's another thing. I think sometimes we've got to get out of the situation as a caregiver and to say, oh, I'm not going to involve anybody else. And like you said, you choose carefully who you involve, right? You know, drama queens need not apply. They're not helpful. And that's why he kicked me out of the hospital, because I couldn't stop crying. I was so mad at God. It's quite a funny story, Annie, if we have time. I was so mad because we had just moved in together. I was 39 years old, never married, finally met the one, and now he has stage 4 cancer. And I didn't realize at the time people can survive that. That was not in my reality. So I'm driving down the highway, yelling at God in the car all by myself. And I finally said, are we even there? And a double guaranteed overnight delivery tandem truck drove by. Well, if you know a guaranteed overnight, it has God on the side, right? So a double God truck drove by me. So I was driving down this country road highway. You know, Route 17 in New York is not a big highway. And, you know, at that point, I knew it was okay to be mad at God. Like, that's not a sin. God has a sense of humor. He sent the double God truck. God has a sense of humor. And, right? And at that point, I realized that I didn't know if he was going to be okay, but I knew I was going to be okay. And so, you know, I think that's another thing, especially for spiritual people, or whether it's religiously spiritual or non-traditionally spiritual, we feel guilty about getting mad, and God doesn't care. You know, God sends tandem God trucks when you're real. I mean, I was mad, you know. So anyway, I know that's off the topic of empathy, but it's a good reminder that it's okay to get mad, and don't judge yourself because spirit doesn't judge yourself.
It's an emotion. It has a name.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And I had to get through it, you know, otherwise it's like acid, you know. So, but anyway, it was a funny story, the God truck.
No, I love it. Oracle Parkway, right? I mean, it's so funny. I love it when that stuff happens. But I remember, you know, Ben, when he was diagnosed and enough time for him to know that something was different and life was a little different. But he said to me, Mom, why aren't you going to ballet? You know, that just is something that I'll always remember, because the fact that he noticed and that it was more concern for me because he knew I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made me think very early on, it's okay. It just reinforced it's okay to keep doing these things.
Yeah. I did a lot of, in the beginning, I went to the gym. And I got so strong, which was good because after Dave went through all that, he had to have reconstructive surgery and he had to be in this wheelchair that went all the way up to the back of his head and he's 6 foot tall. Yeah, it wasn't easy. So it was a good thing I was strong. This time I'm eating through it. And I said I wasn't going to, but I am. I'm eating and crocheting through it. That's how I'm handling my stress. And then lunch with friends, time with friends. But it's so important that we do for ourselves, whether it's because we're empathetically picking up on other people. Solution for that, it sounds easy because it is easy. It's just mindfulness is not easy, but it's being mindful and aware of when you're being triggered and paying attention. Am I being triggered to me or am I being triggered to somebody else? Is this me or is this somebody else? And then grounding, breathing. I like to do the light work, but not everybody's going to be doing that. And then, coming back to what am I doing for myself and can I fix it? And if I can't fix it, or if the person doesn't want me to fix it, like with Dave's eating, it's now a thing we cannot mention because I don't know, it's a trigger for him. And I don't want him resentful at me, for nagging him. So if he loses weight, he loses weight. It's just, what are you going to do? But, not everybody wants everything fixed. And
Big one.
That's big one. And that's really hard for empaths because if you don't fix it, I've got to keep feeling it,
Mm-hmm.
So, and I swear every pound he's losing, I'm gaining. So I'm not happy with that.
It does balance out that.
It does.
In this situation, I mean, sometimes you are aware, but these caregiving situations can be very long-term, right? And so people become emotionally exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
right, over time. So is there another little trick or little gem you could give us?
Allowing yourself that their care may not always be to the level that you can provide, but sometimes you have to let other people help. If it's long term, life is not wonderful all the time. I tell people in my counseling that there's best, better, and good enough, right? And we cannot always be at the best. So even though we want to give our loved one the best care possible, sometimes we need a break because otherwise we won't be able to continue it. So they have to get good enough. And that might be by letting somebody else help. And maybe they are not very good. When my husband was in that wheelchair after 3 back surgeries in 5 weeks, I took him to the zoo. I couldn't stand being cooped up. So I put him in the wheelchair and we went to the zoo. And when I tell you, I was a terrible wheelchair driver. I would run into things, and he'd be like, meanwhile, I'd run into the walls. Oh my God, the poor guy. He was so patient. But anyway, if I was the caregiver and I said, I have to let Cindy drive the wheelchair for a bit because I need a break, Dave survived it. It wasn't best because I wasn't the best, but it was good enough. And I think that the thing to remember is that it is not always going to be best. You're not always going to be best. Sometimes you're just going to be good enough, and sometimes you're going to fall flat. But if that person was taking care of themselves in their own life, sometimes they'd fall flat too.
No, but that is hard.
Really hard.
No, I was Ben's father and I both had businesses and maintained them during that time. But there was one period in particular, he was going to be in New York for 12 days and I had to come home. And so that was the longest stretch. And I got used to not being at everything. I was at most everything. And I wasn't worried, necessarily, but I mean, they've really bonded during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And as hard as that was, it was actually good for them, but it was 3.5 years we did that with him. So you, after a while, just kind of give up.
Yeah. You have to sometimes allow, and then other people want to help, and it's a gift to allow them to help. The problem I find is people want to help the way they want to help, not the way you really need help.
Amen.
I want someone to come take out my garbage. But that's not glamorous.
No.
Yeah.
No, you don't always need a casserole.
Yeah.
I mean, the go-to is food, and a lot of times when someone has a physical ailment, I mean, they're not hungry.
Yeah. Well, and Dave, it's his mouth. He can't. That's the problem. He can't eat. Well, he's getting better now. Things are improving in that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's only so much. I remember when my mom went in the hospital for something years ago. She was very loved by her community. And someone sent the Chamber of Commerce actually sent I'm sitting at a 30-inch round table right now. And there was a platter of sandwiches that filled this 30-inch round. He was so sick of sandwiches, after it was a quarter way done. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sometimes the only rest you get is going grocery shopping.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what you want. And if you are someone watching this that wants to help a caregiver, ask them what help they need. They will say nothing. They will say, I don't need anything. Then maybe you say, I have Tuesday free. Is there something on Tuesday that you could use, or I'm going to the grocery store. Do you want me to pick up something? And yeah, because the first reaction is like when a woman falls. It's the same thing. A caregiver, also, there's a level of control and sense of self that the caregiver ends up developing. And so sometimes you really have to wrestle away and let people help because, there's some of your value comes from that caregiving, I think, sometimes. And that's not healthy.
No. I got very vocal about what I wanted and needed. And sometimes it was, I want to go to dinner and I don't want to talk about it. Like your lunch with your...
I have the friends I can say, I want to talk about it or I don't want to talk about it. I had one person say, so you want to talk about it or not? I'm like, no, I don't.
I love that. I mean, because sometimes you just want to feel a sense of, I say normalcy, and a lot of times you never really go back to a normal. It's a new normal, but just to feel like you're in a restaurant and you can carry on conversation. I wasn't very public about my illness because I was still working, and I feel like people might have perceived me in a different way, not capable anymore of doing. I mean, there's so many things that went through my mind. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I didn't really become vocal about it until I was, kind of on the other side. And that helped me.
I think that that's natural, that there is a stigma around sickness. And we had a friend when Dave got sick the first time, good friend, who just disappeared until Dave was on the other side of it. And then he came back. And we realized that he just could not deal with illness. He just couldn't. So he disappeared. And we could have either gotten really resentful. We chose not to. It was like, long time no see. Good to see you. Welcome back. But I don't know whether you couldn't deal with the prospect of death or he couldn't deal with illness. I don't know what his shtick was. It doesn't matter. It just, people react differently. And, Dave calls it the dead man walking look. When we walked out of the first, and the guy said the prognosis is grim. Yeah, he actually used that word. His whole staff had the dead man walking look as Dave walked out. I hate that look.
Can't either. I mean, you're still living. I mean, he's
still alive, give him some help. And then we go to the radiologist who is the opposite. We're not giving up on you. We're like, well, you're the first person who said that.
The interesting, radiologists have a different spin.
They do. We the best luck with the radiologists for attitude.
I found that I've loved all, Ben's mine. I thought they were great. Surgeons, maybe just in it more.
I don't know. Yeah, it was the surgeon was the one that gave us, we've had trouble with surgeons. The first surgeon in Dave's first time said, there's no reason to do the surgery because you're not going to live that long. At least this surgeon was more polite, but he did say the prognosis is grim.
I mean, from an energetic standpoint.
Yeah, I love radiologists. There's something about them.
Yeah, I know, right? But when someone tells you that, the prognosis is grim, it's almost like your body. I felt like I had to mentally trick myself because if I continue to act in way this one physician was tracking with it, I was like, no, that's not how I feel.
Yeah, it took the breath away and I had to rebreathe when he was like that. And I believed it. But then we went to a couple other doctors, and right now things are looking very promising. I'm not breathing fully yet, but they're looking very promising. I think it's so important to recognize your words as well. We had a friend who said, I just got my death sentence, and she died, had the same thing Dave had, I got my death sentence, and boom, she was gone. Another person, it's time for me to go get my poison, gone. So I think how we talk to ourselves is so important. And that isn't all of it. You don't talk cancer away. You have to take care of business, but I think that you can empower your body to do better when you are aware of your words.
Very much so. Very, very much so.
And the words of people around you. That's why the dead man walking look is so discouraging.
Because when you have a stage 4, you could clear a room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really. So tell me, you sent me this book about a week or so ago, and it was such a little great read. And I was sitting on the couch one day, and I was just having a moment, and I think I told you, I went over and I grabbed it, and I went to it's 18, the Golden Light Meditation. And it was just really what I needed at that moment. So tell me the story. This is a while now. 12 years ago. A lot has changed in the spiritual world since then. But what was your thought process in writing?
In the spiritual world, there's a judgment if you're not a good meditator. There's just a judgment that you get. And I stink at meditation. I'm too high strung. I am too, I don't know whether you'd say ADHD or whatever, I don't like to label myself. I'm just too high strung to sit and meditate. My attention, it doesn't work. I have trouble counting my stitches when I'm crocheting. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So, I wanted to write a book for someone like me who can't or doesn't have the time to sit and own for 20 minutes before work, or half an hour or 3 hours. I had meditation friends that, could do it I had a guy that actually his body would do this, he would meditate at such a high level. So anyway, not me. And my husband's a great meditator. So Mini Meditations for Busy Souls is the subtitle.
Yeah.
So I find that I do my meditations a little bit at a time throughout the day. So, and in different ways. I have a blessing meditation that's fun to do at the grocery store, where you fill yourself with love and light, and you just send these blessings out to people that you meet, and you don't say anything. And you always intend that if they don't want it, they don't get it, but it's like a little bless you. And what it's doing is you're focusing, and that's the goal of meditation, to focus on something. You focus, but you're filling yourself with love and light. You can't hurt. And whether they're getting it or not, doesn't really matter, right? But you do that while maybe you only do it going up the bread aisle. I don't know. Going up the bread aisle, you've got a minute or two of meditation, and when you start doing it on a regular basis and with these little minutes, they add up, and you start getting the benefits. Will you get the benefit of doing once a week a 1-minute meditation? Probably not. But if you develop throughout your life ways to add, I'm taking a shower, where I'm going to focus only on washing my arm. And when I start thinking about the grocery list, I'm going to say, oh, love you, mind? Come on, let's get back to the arm. I got to finish this arm. I don't expect to have that mindfulness throughout my whole body. If I can do an arm and keep my focus, I'm doing really well. So by adding these, but then also I'm a person that wants to know why. Why am I doing that? Why? And so the breathing meditation includes a chapter on the importance of breath. The golden light educates you about what golden light is. And the golden light meditation is what I recommend to all empathic people, to strengthen what's called their auric field, so that they're not it's kind of like, instead of being Swiss cheese, you're thick cheddar. You're not gonna have as much come through without your permission. So each chapter not only gives a meditation and an example. I use my family a lot, although I just use their names. It's not really them. I use my family a lot. It gives why you would do that. And so it's also a primer into basic spiritual concepts, such as the importance of breath, such as the importance of your energy. But it was designed because there was nothing out there for me to make me feel good about meditation, because I couldn't do the sit like a pretzel and and for half an hour.
That's what I hear a lot. I can't do that. My mind.
Yeah. You can do the ones in the book. I promise you.
Yep. And I think you have to train yourself to do them.
Yeah.
It wasn't great when I started.
Yeah. And the thing is the way you use the book is the way it's actually designed. What do I need today? I mean, if you're not using it to learn, because it is a primer, what do I need today? You just open the book and that's the meditation that you need for the day. But there's the blessing meditation. There's just a ton of different things that you do. The washing dishes meditation, which is like washing the arm, let me wash my dish and let me just focus. And you all have done that. You all have been doing something to such focus that somebody scared the bejesus out of you because they came up behind you, right? So that is a meditation. But we have this fallacy in our brain that meditation has to look like a pretzel, and a yogi, and yes, those are wonderful. And if you can do it, God bless, but I can't.
Yeah. I always thought you were talking about the shower and washing dishes with the water, but you know how you take a shower and it may be the time where you're in there by yourself. If you have a family, your husband's on the shower, your kids, no one's in the bathroom, and you actually have a minute to yourself. But I always found that that's where my ideas would come in so quickly. Almost like I wanted to keep a little notepad and pen, in one of the drawers, because I would get out of the shower and want to write something down.
That's kind of a joke within the community of psychic or intuitive development, is that the best to get your best in the shower, so if you want to do your psychic exercises or your intuitive exercises, it's, my feeling is, other people may say something different. My feeling is it's because you're meditating. You're so focused on something else that spirits find finally she's quieted down enough that I can send that thought or knowing or vision or however you get yours. Everybody's different, but I can send that through and it'll actually make it. It's another reason why dreams are a common place that we get our information, and meditation, right? Because we're quieting our mind enough to do that. People get runner's high, right? And exercise. I mean, that exercise was such a relief when Dave was going through cancer the first time. I mean, and I never was. We were raised couch potatoes. We skied. That was about it. That was the extent of our activities. And so it was foreign for me, but it's what got me through that earlier time. And I think it's because I could focus on my breath. I could focus on anything else but all the CRAP going on in my life at the time. Yeah.
So tell me, when you work with people to integrate empathy, I mean, how do you see it now? I really believe that the, woo-woo phase might be over, when we're talking about intuition and even psychic ability. I think it's more accepted and much more curious about it. But how do you see empathy playing into that larger scale of healing?
I think empathy has become more mainstream. I think some of the authors have done that. There's an author that is, I can't, for some reason, her name escapes me. But anyway, empathy has become more mainstream. Empathy has become an excuse in some ways for just a person who feels a lot, but it doesn't matter because empathy is very important. I think empathy can be seen as a superpower now. And I think that empathy is kind of the doorway to acceptance of more intuitive abilities, because empathy, clear empathy is a form of intuitive knowledge. You're getting something through feeling, sensing, or knowing another person's energy. So I think it's become a lot more mainstream. So thank you very much to that author whose name escapes me right now. But I think also, and that's why I wanted to define it in the beginning with a very simple definition, but define it because it's become a catch term. And so I think people use it and don't really know what it is. If you are not empathy driven, it does not mean you're not empathetic. Yeah. You can be empathetic to a situation and you can consciously understand that someone's going through a tough time. When you have empathy, you feel or experience what they're going through. So when somebody stubs their toe, I say, ouch, and my toe hurts. My back was hurting me, and I was like, I don't think I did anything. And then Dave's like, oh, can you put one of those patches on my back? It's killing me. I'm like, oh. So sometimes you don't even realize it, So empathy is different than being empathetic. Empathetic's with the mind. Empathy is in more of an energetic thing.
Yeah. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah. Because I think everybody's well, unless you're a sociopath, everybody's empathetic, you know?
Sometimes being just empathetic is good because you're not getting in the other person's head necessarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're draining your own energy in the situation.
You're not having to energetically cope with something above and beyond the intellectual understanding, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that I would rather be empathetic than empathic. When you're empathic, first you have to get out of the way. You have to stop projecting how you want it fixed. You have to stop projecting all of that. I see empathy as a superpower, so don't get me wrong when I'm saying this, but I think as far as coping, it's easier. I mean, I make better choices if you are simply empathetic, because you're not having that visceral reaction that you have to deal with first before you can choose a thing of action.
Yeah.
You know, and I think sometimes you have more clarity. The problem with being empathetic versus having empathy is you don't get it sometimes. Like you think you can get it, but you don't get it until you've actually had the heart palpitation when someone else is going through anxiety, or had the bad back, had the actual pain in your back when somebody else has a backache.
So the beauty would be to be both.
I think so. I think the beauty would be mindful. Again, if there's a key to this, it's mindfulness. To be mindful, to be able to say, I'm having an emotion or a reaction, energetic reaction that I wasn't having 2 seconds ago. Is this mine? Is this not mine? And being able to determine that creates an intimacy with yourself, And then you can say, okay, who around me, even if it's, my mother-in-law 3,000 miles away, who around me is having that? Do I need to take action? I don't need to hold it. Now that I'm aware it's not mine, take a breath, ground, maybe eliminate your hair a little bit, take a breath, ground, and then push it away. And almost like you can say, okay, I don't have to wear this. Let me look at it. It's out here now. I'm not experiencing it. Do I want to drink it? Do I not want to drink it? Does it need ice? Does it not need ice? You can then evaluate it. Then you can be empathetic about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in these caregiver circumstances that we all find ourselves in at one point or another, and sometimes it happens so quickly, right? That you're thrown into a situation, but it's so important to understand that.
And I think also to understand that if you're at the doctor's, loved one gets a diagnosis, first of all, bring a piece of paper. If you are the caregiver, write everything down, because neither of you will remember when you get home. I don't care if you're 24, 34, or 64. You won't remember. It's fog, when the first diagnosis is there. Write it all down. But besides that, recognize that you and the person you're caring for is not going to have a clue for at least 36 hours on anything. You're not going to be able to think clearly. You're not going to be able to see clearly. And it's probably going to be longer than 36 hours. But if you're the caregiver, by then you probably have the ability to, and go have lunch with a friend, call a friend, whatever you need to do. If you're not a call a friend person, just don't Google it. Do what you need. Maybe yours is a walk at the boardwalk. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is you need to recenter and then come back to it. But don't expect yourself to be brilliant, mindful, able to handle your emotions, right away. It's unrealistic, and you're not Superwoman or Superman, You're going to have these natural reactions. You're going to be in shock. If you get in a car accident, people don't expect you to think straight right away. This is like a life car accident. It stops you in your tracks. You cannot move forward until you do something. You have to clear the debris out of the road, and you need to allow that time. And if you're empathic, on top of that, a lot of deep breathing, a lot of grounding, a lot of evaluation. Is this mine? Is this yours? Can I help? Do you want help? and the other person in the first 36, 48 hours isn't going to know what they want either. But take notes. If you're the caregiver, that's your job. Your job is to take notes at the doctor's office, and then you can refer back to them, and the two of you can have an intelligent conversation.
That is such great advice.
Yeah.
At the foundation, we talk a lot about healing. So I am going to ask you something I ask most of my guests. What does the word healing mean to you?
I think healing to me is being able to live in integrity with who you are despite the outward circumstances. Because one of the hardest things again, you can be religiously spiritual, you can be non-traditional spiritual. One of the hardest things, if you have any spirituality in you, is recognizing thy will be done, not my will be done. Being able to pray. I mean, I'm a prayer. Some people are like I said, some people meditate. I'm a prayer. Being able to pray for healing in a way that's for the highest and most loving concern takes away this idea that everything's going to be better when I'm healed. I have seen people that have been physically healed, but not been able to release the trauma or whatever. Sometimes it's the power that comes with being ill. Sometimes it's the drama of being ill. Sometimes it's just the trauma, And so healing to me is not necessarily the physical release of everything that was a problem. So I think it's more of being able to be in integrity with who you are within whatever circumstance that you're dealing with. And to me, healing is always to the highest and most loving good. When my mother was ill years ago, she ended up coming out of it. She was a very dynamic woman. And my sister and I sat and slept in twin beds back at the old homestead, and we're like, my sister says, and she's a Presbyterian Baptist, if you can imagine that combo. And she said, I don't know what to pray for. Because we knew that if my mother was going to come out without her faculties, she would be miserable because she ran her business. She was 81, still running a thriving business, in charge of this, in charge of that. She was a very dynamic woman. And I said, I'm just going to pray, thy will be done, whatever's for her highest and most loving good. And so it made me look at healing differently, like the body may be healed, but if the spirit can't come along with it, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all the time I spent as a caregiver, it made me really understand the power of presence and really understanding there was so much out of my control, but whatever we were experiencing, good or bad, I mean, it was our experience, and I really stayed away from labeling things as good or bad along the way, and really found, you can find joy and resources around every corner.
Yeah.
And it kind of took all that edginess away, and like you said in the beginning, I mean, we're here, we're down here, we're going to experience it all, the anger, all the things that come with, being a caregiver and being empathetic. And
it's an amazing journey. It's one I don't wish on anyone. But if you are finding yourself as a caregiver, remember taking care of yourself is probably the best gift that you can give the person that you're caring for, and taking care of yourself in a way that honors where you are, so you are in integrity. And if you're having a crappy day, have a crappy day, maybe have it someplace else, if you can. But if you're having a crummy day, have a crummy day, honor that it's a crummy day, and do what you need to do to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're having a joyful moment, don't be afraid to be happy and laugh. Just because someone else is going through a crummy time, it doesn't mean that they don't want to laugh and they don't want to be treated differently. If you always were sarcastic with your friend who's going through cancer, don't all of a sudden treat them like a China doll. Be in integrity with the relationship that you have with that person. And I think that will make it, when you don't know what to do what the person is used to. That's what's going to bring them comfort, is familiarity. And then, taking care of yourself will allow you to be the best, whether you're empathic or not.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with our audience. I think it's reminders for those of us who are caregivers. And it just seems like so many more of us these days. Actually, I was on my way back to the studio and I got a call from someone who had a business question, but he said, I need to tell you this. And he told me this long story about his mother who was ill and his father was ill, and then he became ill. And, I couldn't help but think of the timing of this podcast and that phone call. So it affects us all at some point.
Yeah. There's so many people. When we go to the Brock Center here in, well, it's in Norfolk, but Virginia Beach, they're really busy. And it's so sad how busy they are. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the statistics right now, at least, seem like they're getting worse.
Yeah.
It might be 1 in 2 will maybe affected by cancer in the future.
But, we seeing the difference in treatment, and on a positive note, seeing the difference in treatment in 25 years from stage 4 lung and bone cancer to this maxilla cancer, the treatment, we were with a good group back in Syracuse, New York, and they were into holistic things, which was wonderful. But seeing the treatment options, there are so many more options now. And when Dave went through the bladder cancer, this immunotherapy is amazing. And just the treatment options and the understanding that, yes, they're giving you things that are going to make it worse short term. And if it's too much, I mean, this is the first time a doctor has said to us, you did not sign up for the 6-day treatment plan. You are not tied to, if you feel that you want to stop after 5 or 4, you're driving this. But the treatments and the facilities and the opportunities, and it's just amazing how much it's grown. And so I'm very hopeful that even though there may be more people diagnosed, that the outcomes will be statistically much better than they were, when Dave was diagnosed 24.
It seems that way. I mean, medicine's progressing. I think there's much more of an integration. We've had so much good success with local health systems that are willing and able to bring in some of these other therapies. And I think it helps people.
Yeah. They call it the 4th floor at the Brock Center. And Dave can go for massage, or he can go for acupressure. I still want him to go to acupressure. And when he gets his balance, I want him to take Tai Chi, there's so many different things and opportunities that just were not, you had to do all on your own.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a lot of really wonderful things happening, but we have to take care of ourselves along the way.
Yes.
Tell us, how can our listeners find out more about you?
Well, I have a website. It's cindygriffith.com. And it's Griffith like Andy Griffith for all you old folks. Cindy Griffith, I used to say he was my uncle when I was a kid. Right, he's not. No relation. So cindygriffith.com. And you can reach me there. I have Cindy Griffith Bennett on Facebook. I'm quite active on Facebook. I also sell crystals on Facebook at Cindy's Crystal Corner. We do crystals. And then, cindygriffith.com is the best way to find out all the different things about me. And then pretty soon you'll be able to go to your page and see Positive Poop. Yes. And if you have any ideas for Positive Poop that you think she would like, you just let me know. Maybe she'll make some more videos.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your work that you do. And I know it helps so many people, and this conversation will go far with our listeners.
Well, thank you so much for all you are doing as well. It's a blessing to be part of the whole thing.
Yeah. And maybe we can work on some other stuff together soon.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you, Cindy.